Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 91 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by our friends at PSCU. As the nation's premier payments CUSO, PSCU proudly supports the success of more than 1,500 credit unions. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Mina Worthington. Mina is the president and CEO of Solarity Credit Union in Yakima, Washington. This was a fun conversation. We talked about a lot: digital transformation, the future of credit unions, remote work, and what the workplace looks like going forward, and how to keep the credit union culture intact with all the change that's going on. Mina shared some amazing nuggets in the leadership section of this show. Her path to the CEO office went through, quite honestly, most of the departments throughout the credit union and even a stint with a bank. So she had some great advice, not only for future CEOs trying to climb their way up, but also new CEOs as well. Since she got her first shot at being a CEO in 2008, she knows what it's like to start during an interesting time period. This was really good stuff. As always, we had some fun with the rapid fire questions to wrap up the show. Mina and I share what we both believe is the best album of all time. That's something we have in common, so she's good people. I think you are really going to take a lot out of this conversation. I know I did. So, without further ado, I give you my conversation with Mina Worthington. Enjoy. Mina, welcome to the show.
Hi there. How are you?
I am doing well. At interesting times we are all living through. It gives us a lot to talk about. So first, how are things with you and your team? How's everyone holding up?
Everyone's holding up. I feel like now that, we're heading towards the end of August, people are a little bit more fatigued at this point, I think people are tired of the isolation that they're feeling. They're tired of not being able to necessarily come into the office and engage in the way that they would prefer to with their staff. So, I think people are starting to get a little tired. And so, leading has become that much more difficult.
I was going to say that's going to lead us, I think, into a bunch of different directions as leaders. I agree with all those people, though, too. It's interesting to how much we miss just that day-to-day interaction, I think, right? So it's the fatigue is real, that's for sure. Any hacks that you've come across as a leader to keep your team feeling connected with everything going on? And it's been interesting, I think, as we went through this, there's so much other things taking up our mental space as well beyond work, kids going back to school and things like that. Is there any way that you found to keep your team, connected?
Well, one of the things that I've been doing since the beginning of all of this is a regular update. At the beginning, it was a couple of times a week. And most recently, it's been only once a week. But just a regular update about what's going on in the organization, the changes that we're seeing, the way that members are behaving, reaching out. School is starting. So reaching out, saying, hey, you've got kids at home and you're worried about working at home and your kids going to school at home, reach out to HR. We're trying to make this the best situation for everybody. If you're worried about working from home and needing internet access, as well as a couple of kids also tapping into the bandwidth, reach out to IT. We're giving you a reimbursement for your internet. You could need to just get a second internet service provider, so you have double the bandwidth. So, really trying to help people with logistics, of this. So those are the sort of tangibles. The other thing that I've been doing is I started out with my updates being through email. Yep. And that was good for a while. And then I realized that I really needed to do them video recording. And so what I'm doing now is I'm providing my update in a video recording. We share those things in a software we have a communication software called Yammer that we use internally. It's kind of like social media for business, if you will. And so I'm posting these updates, these videos to Yammer so that people can view the videos a couple of different times if they want to. So it's helping, I think, take it to another level. The more isolated people feel, the more high touch that I feel they need.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've been a part of a few different CEO calls over this time. And I think that connection point is something that everybody's still trying to figure out, and not knowing where this is going to lead going forward, right? And how long we're going to be in this situation. So, when you look back personally over the past couple of months, how do you feel you've grown as a leader? None of us had been through a global pandemic, I don't think, before, so.
No, certainly not. One of the things that I think that I tend to be good at is dragon slaying. And I see this as a dragon slaying situation, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to kind of shine in those situations where it's like, I have a dragon, we have a dragon, I'm leading the charge here, my sword is out. And so, everybody get behind me, we're going to slay this dragon. So I felt really, and not to sound bad,
yeah.
I felt kind of energized by the problem in the beginning, right? Like by the dragon that I needed to slay on behalf of the organization, on behalf of the community. And so the dragon has become a little more elusive, right? Like I thought we killed the dragon. Oh wait, no, it has another head.
It's back.
Yeah. So, so it's been kind of an interesting, time in that regard, and that the dragon is sort of an ongoing. And so the thing that I've also really tried to do is energize the team behind the idea of, never let a crisis go wasted. There's a great opportunity here to do a lot of transformation of the way that we do business. And so we've been talking forever about digital transformation. We've been talking forever about all these different things. We cannot stand by. And so also, we're dealing with this major change in our personal lives and in the way that we work. And by the way, I'm going to completely shift the business model too.
At the credit union. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that, like rising to the occasion. When I was speaking with Chuck Purvis on the podcast a few weeks back, him and I, and you kind of go, well, we didn't want this, but it's almost like being able to move quickly and have to make decisions and things like that. It can be re-energizing to say, okay, what can we do here, like going forward? And I know I don't want to say we've had a ton of fun at CUInsight, but it's like, how can we deliver news and everything in a different way? And I've heard that quite a bit from credit unions as well. And I will say, it kind of leads me to the next question. Historically, we've been an industry that tends to move slow. And I've been really impressed over the past few months on how fast everybody has made changes to serve the members. What would you say is the biggest change at your credit union? And, how do you think that plays in long term, even once this is all behind us?
Well, a couple of really big changes. One of the biggest changes is going to be that we are going to maintain this remote workforce. About 2 weeks before this all kind of really broke at mid-February, I met with an architect about building 40,000 square feet, new 40,000, 50,000 square foot, right?
Yeah.
And I hate to build buildings because it's millions and millions of dollars of fixed asset. I could be doing other things with that money to generate income, right? But instead, I've got to invest in this building, right? And so, we deployed everybody remote, and then everybody actually really loved it at the beginning. Now people are starting to say, well, we still love it, but we would like to come together with our team. So one of the things that we're doing is we're going to move forward with the remote workforce, but use the current facilities that we have as places to engage and collaborate. And so I think that we're going to end up with some sort of a hybrid approach. So you might work at home 2 or 3 days a week. You might come to the office, 2 or 3 days a week kind of thing. And that will use our space and rotate teams in and out so that we can use the same amount of space for 4 or 5 times the amount of people that it would fit normally, right? By rotating people in and out. So that is a big change and something that I think is going to be an interesting way to learn our way into and remain culturally the way we want to be.
That's a big thing with remote work, right? Is trying to make sure the culture still holds when people are in different places. So, yeah.
Yes. And so we're learning, how to lead the organization from a human resources perspective differently in that regard. And, it's worked in many, many industries, right? There are many industries where, the entire workforce is remote. Think about all these pharmaceutical companies or whoever who have all these outbound salespeople, they still are able to maintain pretty cohesive culture. So I know it can be done. It's just going to be a matter of digging our heels in and making sure that we don't give up, that we keep moving forward to make this a great culture the way we want it to be.
Yesterday, I was going to say, I was listening to NPR and they had the CEO of one of the big consulting firms on out there, but they didn't, and I'm going to have to Google this to put in the show notes, but they did a survey of CEOs across the country. And what you're speaking of was I mean, across like in that study result that they were talking about, that most do not see bringing as many people back in making that office, the headquarters space, much more collaborative. The same way to keep that connection, because people want a hybrid, basically, of, employees want a hybrid of, what they had before and what they have today. So, yeah.
Well, and we had been for a while hiring people for very specialized positions like software engineers and very specialized marketing technologists and different types of positions where we couldn't necessarily recruit in our local market. We're in a rural central Washington market. So we've been hiring people for remote positions or people who are moving, but they want to stay employed. Our compliance officer has been with us for 7 years. 4 of those have been remote because her husband's in the military. And so she travels with him and maintains our compliance officer. So we've been doing that for a while. It's just on a much larger scale now. And actually, when we hire people, saying our intent is that you at least work remote half of the time, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big change. The other big changes are coming in our membership. Obviously, we're asking our members to do business differently. Our lobbies are closed and will remain closed.
Yep.
So asking members to transition the way that they do business, actually proactively reaching out to members who are using our drive-ups for transactions that they could be doing otherwise, like a check deposit. I mean, with remote deposit capture, I can't imagine why anybody would ever want to sit in the drive-up for 10 or 15 minutes and try to deposit a check. I mean, I take a picture of it with my phone and it's in my account, So trying to educate members about that and the security behind that. Mm-hmm. So making proactively reaching out to the membership and helping them to get a little more digital in their lives. And, about 40% of them are ready, willing, and able. So it's a good sign.
It has been so cool to see the transformation that has happened in members. This technology has been around for a while, but the adoption rate has just went through the roof right during this. And that once you've taken the picture of the check, you're never going back, right? Like It's just like, this is much easier. So kind of a bigger blimp level question that I would ask you, is there something that you think credit unions overall long-term need to do differently to stay relevant? Before this all happened, there was a lot of disruption going on in financial services. So is there something we need to be doing better?
Well, this is a big opportunity for current members and the consumers who are not members to have a different perspective about our technological capabilities. We discovered through the research that we've done, as an industry through CUNA, that one of the things that members say about us is, well, they don't have the sophistication, right, to meet my needs. And so I think that we need to continue to provide that knowledge of the sophistication that we have to meet the needs of our members. And so we need to continue to work on that technology and improving that technology and understand that, this is your quote unquote website, which your members don't know the difference between online banking and website, right?
Nope.
That's the place where you interact with your members. That interaction is just as important as the training you give to your staff. It's as important as the remodel you're doing to your lobby. So putting the money and the time towards making sure that digital experience meets their expectation, and it's a huge opportunity for us.
Oh, absolutely. The last question in this first section, if we were to sit down a year from now, if you broke out that crystal ball, which I know tends to be foggy for most of us at this point in time, but what are you most proud of that you and your team have accomplished at the credit union?
That we have actually accomplished the transformation of our business model into the digital age.
So I have to ask you, because you brought that up a couple of times now, it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that was something you were working on before this all happened. So has it just been kind of pushed forward, like at a faster pace? Or
Yes. So, we've been saying for a long time, the words digital transformation. And to us, digital transformation doesn't mean we have online banking, right? Digital transformation means that our business operates like a technology company that offers financial services versus a financial services company that offers technology.
Yep.
So we've been pushing towards the digitization of our business for quite some time. And so I feel like now's the opportunity to really, the public is going to be ready, willing, and able to move faster. We've been capable. We've been able to open accounts and loans and all this stuff. We've been able to close a loan 100% digitally for a long time. But now people are going, wow, I didn't have to come in. I can just do all of that. Like this I think is a huge opportunity for us to say, yeah, we can do it. And guess what? You're ready. Let's bring that together. And so I think it's a huge opportunity to bring our members along with where the technology is capable.
It really is interesting, even outside of financial services and credit unions, to see where that's going to go. During this, Jill and I bought a new car. And, most of it was done Zoom and email and stuff even before we ever did anything. So, that's going to be interesting to see just how that adoption and that we've, I think, all kind of been waiting for is actually going to take place. All right. So on to the second part of the show, the leadership section. I was really looking forward to asking some of these questions. To start, what inspired you originally to take the job as president and CEO of the credit union in the first place?
I actually worked at my first credit union when I was 18 years old. And by the time I was about 20, I had made the decision that I wanted to be a credit union CEO.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's been something that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. And so it's something that I've worked for since a young age. And so what I always thought was that the best CEO would probably be the one that was a good generalist. And so I have spent time in lending, operations, IT. I spent time in accounting, finance. And so I spent my time sort of working my way up to the CEO by basically taking moves to various parts of the organization. Sometimes this isn't my phrase, Sheryl Sandberg says, a career is more like a jungle gym than a ladder. We tend to think of things as a progression of, promotions.
Yep.
And while I read her book many years after I already did this, right. I also viewed my career as more of a jungle gym. So I made moves laterally. I made moves sometimes backwards just to get experience. I went from like a position where I was a VP of finance back to a branch manager at a large institution because I hadn't ever worked. I hadn't worked as a branch manager in a branch environment. I'd only worked as like a teller in a branch environment.
So, okay, two different questions there. Did you get your start as a teller? Are you one of the stories that teller to CEO?
Yes, I started as a teller when I was 17 years old.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then the second question, I've talked often with CEOs on the podcast, kind of from two different schools of thought, like where some came up in the organization the whole way through and became CEO. Others, you had to leave to find that other opportunity, right?
I left. I didn't stay in the same organization. I've worked in several different entities. I've worked in banks as well.
Did you really? Okay. Now we have to ask, is there stuff that you brought back from that experience that's helped you lead today? Yeah.
I went into banking in 2000, and that was just when credit unions were starting to get into business lending. And so I went into banking, and I was a market manager at a large bank. And basically, at that point, they were pushing the small business lending out into the branches, keeping their commercial loan officers for the larger deals, and anything that was like $1 million under was being done by the market managers and the branch managers. And so, that's where I got my small business lending experience. And I thought, oh man, I've ruined my credit union career. And I tell you, when I was ready to get back into credit unions, it was like, what? You've been doing small business banking for the last 3 years? So it was something that people loved.
They wanted to bring you back in. That's for sure. That's really cool. So since becoming the CEO, has the inspiration changed at all with time on the job?
The inspiration, can you explain that a little deeper for me?
I've tried to stop using this term, but so often it's lonely at the top, right? Like everything kind of runs up, falls to you. You have a team that's around you, but in the end, you have to make that final decision. So often before we actually get to that position of CEO, when I first brought this question around, it came from a friend of mine who did recruiting work. And he often said that the toughest position to hire for is the CEO, because if they've never been that leader before, if they can be the greatest number two, but can you be the CEO? Right. So once you got that chair, that office, did the inspiration change at all, or is it the same that you've always had?
No, I don't think the inspiration has changed at all. I think this is, so I can't even believe this, but I've been a CEO now since 2008. And I started out at Yakima Valley Credit Union, and it became Solarity because I facilitated a merger with another credit union in town, a merger of equals, and it became Solarity in 2011. So, that's still a long time, 2011 to 2020. That's a long time. And I never would have thought in a million years that I would be in the same job that many years. I mean, never. That was not my gig, right? But the thing about being the CEO is I facilitate change. I'm an agent of change. And so I'm constantly moving the organization in a different direction based on where I think it needs to be, 12, 24, 60 months from now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's an ever-changing environment. It's changed dramatically. If this was the same industry, if this was the same job it was when I started in 1989, there'd be no way. I'd be so terribly bored. But it's not. It's an industry that financial services is what I'm talking about. Credit unions, of course, being part of that, but financial services has been under disruption for the last 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
The industry is changing dramatically. It's exciting, and so having the ability to lead through and facilitate the organization through those changing times is never gets boring for me.
That's true. I hear you there. I have to ask this question. You mentioned 2008 was when you became a CEO for the first time. So first time CEO in a financial crisis. Any tips you can give the new CEOs today? I know I've talked to a couple who have, first time CEOs and then a global pandemic hit. Any tips as somebody who survived a turbulent time, I guess you could say, in your first year?
Yeah. I always laugh about my predecessor. I'm like, man, that guy got out at just the right time. What I would say is follow your instincts. Be conservative. You cannot. The thing about a recession, I've been waiting for a recession for a while because I now made it through, the Great Recession.
Yep.
Feel as though I'm an experienced CEO for the last 3 or 4 years. I've been saying, I can't wait for the next recession. It's going to be opportunity to capture market share. Like, we're positioned from a capital perspective, from a talent perspective, like as others exit, we will be there and open and ready to do business, the good business that they won't be willing to do because they'll make blanket decisions about we no longer do construction lending, we no longer do, and I'll be able to come in with my great team of people and we'll be able to take some of that market share. So I guess I would say to new CEOs, don't be overly, be cautious, follow your gut, be conservative, but don't be overly cautious.
Okay.
Do the stuff that makes sense. Do the stuff that makes sense and take opportunities to grow your business when others are going to be retracting.
That's good stuff there. As a leader, is there something the people on your team have heard you say so many times that they can finish your sentence?
Probably, yeah. And that would be that the definition of member centricity is flawless execution of member experience at every touch point, every time.
I like that. Jeez. Is there a common myth about leadership that you would want to debunk?
There are so many. The biggest myth about leadership that I would debunk is that leaders who care about the organization first and foremost, which frankly we should all be putting this organization above everybody, including ourselves, because it's for the members. But it would be incorrect to say that a CEO who has the perspective of it's about the organization first doesn't also care about the people in the organization.
I hear what you're saying there. When you think back to earlier in your career, was there a mistake that you made, or now as a leader, is there a mistake that you just see young leaders make?
The mistake would be that you want to feel like people like you. You should never mistake someone's politeness or their respect as actually liking you and considering you to be someone they're friendly with. You should always realize that they are treating you with respect because of the position that you hold. And you should respect them equally, obviously, but that it is that respect that will get you the engagement and the loyalty, much more so than the fact that they like you.
Yeah. Good stuff. Has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you received that you find yourself going back to over and over in your career?
Yes, I had the luxury of mentors. Of course, that's the other thing about mentors. I think if you see opportunity to get a mentor and you grab it, then maybe you were lucky, or maybe you just saw an opportunity that others were too afraid to take. But I had a mentor tell me in my early 20s that what you need to understand is that from the moment your car pulls in the parking lot and your foot steps onto the pavement, everybody's watching you.
Yeah.
And that is the truth.
I remember early on in CUInsight, a friend of mine at CUSO, she said that their former CEO, Fred Johnson, used to tell them, like, the second you step on the plane going to a conference, you never know who's behind you or watching you, that type of a thing. There could be a member right behind there. So that's something, that's good advice. It's something I've passed on to my team as well when we're out running around. So, before we move on to the last part of the show, if you have a free day, there's nothing on the calendar. I know those are rare, but what passions do you have outside of credit unions? What do you do to relax? That work-life integration. What does that look like for you?
Right. I have a family.
Yep.
I guess it's another myth I'd like to debunk, is that you can be a successful career-oriented female and have a family.
Yep.
And so I love to spend time with them. And because it's so beautiful and sunny and warm out, one of the things we do during the summertime is we like to go boating.
Yeah. Yep.
So we like to spend our time on the water, and I love to travel and vacation. Any number of places. I love to travel. Of course, yes, it's not 2020 has not granted me much opportunity for that.
No, that's the painful part for us as well. So we renewed our passports during this, though, since we knew we couldn't go anywhere. So that was,
don't let that thing expire, because that's a real pain.
Yeah, no, we both. It took about 10 weeks to get them back. We were like freaking out the whole time, felt naked without our passports, but can't use them right now. So we finally did both get them back, though. On to the last part of the show, the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. What were you like in high school? And do you remember the first time you got into memorable trouble?
In high school, I was a slacker and a partier. And I remember getting into trouble, having my mom called by another parent when I was a senior in high school about getting caught at a party.
Yep. That's funny. The last guest on the podcast talked about their senior year too, and they took their family's Jeep, Victor, from Coopera, and he forgot that the tides came in and out. Parked the Jeep way too close to them. But yeah, it was another high school. Yep. So it's always fun to think about that. That's good stuff. Most of us stumbled into a career in credit unions in one way or another. It sounds like, you got into them very, very young. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Before that?
Before credit unions.
Before credit unions. Oh, I actually wanted to be a graphic designer. I thought I wanted to be a CAD designer.
Yeah. It's and now you probably have some that work for you. So, do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
Yes, I get up early in the morning. I get up about 4:30 in the morning, and I like to work out. And if I don't do that, then my day feels kind of off. Now, obviously, on the weekends, I don't get up quite that early.
Wow, you might be competing with when Tansley Stearns was on the podcast. She gets up about 4:30 in the morning too. That's crazy. I thought I was an early riser at 5:30. So the random question, what's the best album of all time? That one you can listen to without skipping a song.
Oh, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction.
When you said slacker, I thought we might be about the same age and everything. So I've told everybody for years that's the best album of all time from front to back. It's the reason I asked the question. And you're the first one to say that. 90 episodes in, you're the first person to say that one on the podcast. So thank you. You just made me smile. That is my favorite too. So I'm a reader. Jill and I have a stack of books around the house. Many were recommended from people on the show. Is there a book that either you've gifted others or you just think everybody should read?
Yes, Good to Great by Jen Collins.
That's a good one. That's for sure. As you've gotten older, what's become more important? And my favorite part of this question, what's become less important?
As I've gotten older, what's become more important is my weekends. My weekends have become much more important. I actually, at this point, rarely work on a weekend. I might check emails, but to me, that's not working because email is just life now. But I try not to work on weekends. And what has become less important? Friends.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. That's the first time that answer's ever been given. Is it a smaller group now, or is it?
Yeah. Much smaller group. I used to be pretty social, and had kind of like this big group of friends, and I could, go to any different little subset of that group, and spend a weekend, And so having friends, I love to entertain. I love to be around groups of people. It's actually really this pandemic has really made me kind of take a second thought about that. Do I really need to have a party, or is it okay for me to just have the kids over, right? You have 4 kids, and maybe the kids and their boyfriend and girlfriends are okay, and we'll just hang out. So it's just become less important to spend a lot of social time with a large group of friends.
Awesome answer. I love when there's new answers on the show. So there's a question that I didn't send you. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind?
Oh, goodness, success. First person that comes to mind. Wow. That's a difficult one. I have all sorts of different, when I think about success, I'm thinking about, people think about success in so many different ways,
That's why I love this question.
Monetarily, or they think about it fame wise. And I guess when I think about the first person I thought of was my husband. And that feels weird.
It's amazing.
But, I feel like he is a business owner. He's an entrepreneur, and he has structured his business in a way that allows him a lot of free time. to do other things.
I feel like I need to meet your husband. Oh.
And he has he's a great family and a great wife. So, he's pretty much made it.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, I love that as an entrepreneur who's structured my life to have a lot of flexibility. I appreciate that. So that's great. Moms and dads get a lot of shout outs there, but husbands, not so many. So I like the answer. Thank you again, Mina, for being on the show and sharing your story. The last question that I have for you is, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners or asks of them?
Well, I guess I would presume most of your listeners are members of the credit union industry.
Absolutely. Yep.
and I would just ask that we continue to innovate and think outside of the box for the good of the entire industry, for the long-term relevance of our industry, because I think it is a necessary thing to do for us to be able to sustain the industry in the way that it needs to be. So.
Absolutely. Well, we will link to everything we talked about in the show notes today. If people have additional questions of you, it's the best way to reach you: LinkedIn, the Twitter machine, email. What's your poison?
Email's good. It's mworthington@solaritycu.org. And so, email always works for me.
Oh, thank you again. And thank you for seconding the greatest album of all time. So I that made my day. I hope, stay healthy and be well. And I hope you have an amazing day.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Before we go, I'd like to just give a big thank you to all of you, our listeners. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for you. We greatly appreciate all the support and love bringing you these episodes each week. Also, thank you to Mina for taking the time out of her busy schedule to share her experiences with all of us. And of course, a big thank you to our sponsor, PSCU. Our friends at PSCU have been longtime partners and supporters of ours at CUInsight.com. So please make sure to click on their link in the show notes. Give them some love. See everything they have going on to help the credit union community. One last thing, don't forget about that CUInsight Experience podcast book list. If you need some stimulation for the old mind, we've got you covered. You can get your next book recommendation from the guests on our show. Thank you all again for listening. Hope you have an amazing day, and please stay healthy, friends.